I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. Tonight we're here to celebrate the...
No.
Let's try that. All right, let's start all over again. I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. Tonight we're here to celebrate what amounts to be a lifelong commitment to helping people and a lifelong commitment to education. For someone to serve their community for 50 years and show the enormous amount of time, dedication, and love for the people of the community, that is what Phyllis has given us. At this time I'd like to bring Phyllis up. And we're going to start the serenade. All right, this is for you. All right. I first met Phyllis about 6 years ago when I was first elected to the Galway Town Board. Over those 6 years, I've gotten to know Phyllis, and I've always looked forward to our town board meetings when I knew she was presenting her monthly historian reports. All of you here tonight know why Phyllis, know what I'm talking about with Phyllis. She's an incredible storyteller. The energy she puts in has made every report truly the most exciting part of any town board meeting. Subsequently, over the last year and a half, since I took Paul Lent's place after his untimely passing, I've had many conversations with Phyllis, and she's helped me understand this town, the community, and much more with her advice and wisdom that 50 years of service has provided her. I'm very thankful for that. Over the last couple of months, I've learned so much more about the history of Phyllis, which there's a story there and there should be a book written. I've learned about Phyllis the teacher, as she taught here in Galway for 32 years, who after hearing her monthly historian reports, I can only imagine how much fun it must have been to have been one of her students, because the level of excitement and energy that she brings and displays to this day must have made her classroom very exciting. Phyllis has made her life's work to educate people, and that's what a teacher and historian does. I've also learned about Phyllis as a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother, a 4-H leader, a summer vacation cabin owner-keeper, a president of the Galway Teachers Association, as well as a president of the Galway School Board, a very active parishioner and active member of the Second Iowa Bible Conference, president of the Upper Hudson Historic Society, and is a chairman, or chairwoman, of the Galway Republican Committee, as well as many, many more civic obligations that Phyllis threw her hat in to help the community that she loves. All of this while being town historian. Tonight we're here to reflect and honor the special part of Phyllis's life and help celebrate her 50 years as town historian. Over those 50 years, Phyllis has shared with the town board numerous phone calls, letters, emails, encounters, and visits from people looking for information about past relatives and history of our great town. I would like to share a couple of the more recent ones that readily come to mind. About 3 years ago, Phyllis was contacted by a woman by the name of Deborah Frazier, whose family's ancestry dates back to the Potter Cemetery in the West Milton Kesselring site. Miss Frazier was trying to gain access to the cemetery at the Kesselring site in East Galway, and Phyllis shared the story with the town board and convinced Paul Lent to help Mrs. Fraser get access. Subsequently, Ms. Fraser has returned many times to the Galway Kesselring site and has been instrumental in returning the Potter Cemetery to a much more favorable condition. Another story that I'd like to share is one of many Eagle Scout projects that Phyllis has been involved in. About 2 years ago, a young man named Eric Malinowski embarked on an Eagle Scout project to clean up, rehab, and restore the Mechanic Street Cemetery. This project was no small undertaking, and without Phyllis's help and historical guidance, the project would have probably been nearly impossible to complete. I dare say that young Eric learned so much from Phyllis and completed a masterful project that he'll never forget. Over the last 50 years, one of the most prominent themes of much of Phyllis's work has been the history of Joseph Henry. As you'll hear from our next speaker, Phyllis is a walking encyclopedia when it comes to the mass amount of knowledge that Phyllis has about Joseph Henry, and is truly amazing. She can educate you on the amazing history without even cracking a book. So, at this time, I'd like to welcome Laura Lee.
Thank you and good evening. I'm not Laura Lee yet. I am now Lori Lieber. And the first assignment that Lori was given was to read the following letter on Phyllis's request. So, may I start with, from Volume 1 of Joseph Henry's papers, a letter to his parents, dated July 26, 1808, Galway, New York. Honored father and mother, I embrace this opportunity to write to you to inform you that I am well at this period. Likewise, grandmother and all the rest of my relatives, and I flatter myself that these few lines will find you enjoying your healths. And my brother and sister, it is a general time of health here. I endeavor to make the best improvement in my learning that I possibly can, through at the first it seemed a little irksome and hard, and I hope to gain the point at last. Pray, dear parents, accept of my most humble duty to yourselves, and kind love to my brother and sister. I subscribe myself, hoping you will look over the blots from your son, Joseph Henry. Maybe those blots are why that sentence didn't sound quite all put together. But this was a letter to his parents, and there, right? So we'll now put one over here. Volume 2. Good evening. It is wonderful to be back in Galway to honor Phyllis Keeler on 50 years as Galway town historian. My name is Lori Liebert, and I am a Joseph Henry Elementary School teacher, retiree, class of 2011. When I began my teaching position at the elementary school in 1983, I found the district immersed in its community history. There were Galway history tours for faculty and staff on superintendent conference days, hands-on walking and bus history tour for grade 4 students, and there was Joseph Henry Day. And there was Phyllis, also, always leading and encouraging others to take the lead or serve on a committee as she does so well. At Phyllis's request, I would now like to read an article by Paul Post of the Saratogian dated June 16, 2011. Celebrating Joseph Henry, students honor Galway's famous resident. Galway, New York. School children were reminded on Thursday that big things do come from small places. Joseph Henry, born 1797, died 1878, created the first Weather Bureau, was the Smithsonian Institution's first director, and a close friend of President Abraham Lincoln. During his boyhood, he spent several years in Galway, where Joseph Henry Elementary School students paid tribute to his amazing life as a scientist and inventor. Keep studying, Joseph Henry would say. As reenactor Don Williams said, Don Williams was there reenacting Joseph Henry, "He's a good role model for you to follow." Each year, students do something special to remember him during Joseph Henry Day ceremonies, organized 26 years ago. Now that was in 2011, 26 years ago, by town historian Phyllis Keeler. One year they released hundreds of balloons with his story attached to share with the world. Said Phyllis, people replied from Vermont and Massachusetts and said that they never realized what a great man Joseph Henry was. President James K. Polk asked Henry in 1846 to establish a science museum in the nation's capital. As its first director, Henry had an apartment and lived in the Smithsonian Castle. President Lincoln would come up there and spend time with Henry, said Lori Liebert, a Galway teacher and Joseph Henry Day committee member. They were very close and friends. Another year, students had a handsome granite memorial placed outside the school that sums up Henry's life. Scientist, inventor, first superintendent of the Smithsonian Institution. It's engraved with a picturesque scene of a young boy in a rural setting. There's also a quote, "Teach your children to read and open up the world to them," Williams said. Henry loved books. He felt that influenced his life in many ways, Williams said. It contributed to his success as an inventor. Among his achievements, Henry invented the electromagnet that's responsible for many of today's modern conveniences. Henry came to Galway at age 7 to live with his step-grandmother. The house has since burned, but a state historical marker has been identifying the location on Route 45, the Ballston-Galway Road, just east of Galway Village. Original bricks from the house are part of a display inside the school entrance. Are they still there?
They're in my office.
They're in your office, okay. Along with copies of Henry's writings. The school has developed a good relationship with Smithsonian officials that once provided 1,500 copies of Henry's books, and some of you are picking some up tonight. Many have been distributed to colleges and libraries throughout this area, and on Thursday, students helped raise a flag provided by U.S. Senator Kristen Gillibrand, Democrat, New York, that's flown over the United States Capitol. They also put up small plaques throughout the school that tell interesting facts and tidbits about Henry's life. An official Town of Galway proclamation was read that recognizes Henry's contributions to science, technology, and higher learning. For all his genius, however, Henry was also a very selfless man. He didn't seek patents for many of his most famous inventions, and that others later got credit for. He wanted to share them with the world, Williams said. There's your article. Now, I need to introduce myself. Laurie's introducing me. I am Laura Lee. I used to be Laura Lee Linder, and I came to Galway in 1982 with my son in the kinder class. And 1984, my daughter Dorothy came here. My son's name is Jamie. And at that point, I met Phyllis. And along came 1987, 88, 1990, and it was time to celebrate the bicentennial of the United States Constitution. And Phyllis, one day, I became active in the PTSA. Some of you may remember me doing that. I did the, hi Donna. I was an officer with all these things and served as president and so on. But that's when I was just getting started. And I had a vision one evening about how we could celebrate the Constitution here at the school. And I realized that we had 13 elementary classes, and there were 13 colonies. Each class became one of the colonies. Remember that? Well, we made little hats. Historians save artifacts and archives, don't we? So each class, each colony, had 2 representatives, or however many there were for the signing of the Constitution. And so the kids reenacted and learned about the Constitution by actually doing what had happened 200 years earlier. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. The next big thing I remember here was that all of a sudden, from what I was doing here at the school, I receive a call from the supervisor, John Simone of Charlton. Charlton needs a new town historian. Phyllis Keeler said you could do it. All right, so for 22 years, thanks to Phyllis, I did serve the town of Charlton as town historian, worked hand in hand with Phyllis on so many projects and so many things. And there we were in 1990, 88, 90. In 1988, for that bicentennial of the Constitution, we were in a parade in Poughkeepsie. Do you remember that? And there's pictures of it for you. And people, if you want to come forward later, the kinds of things I set up on the stage are just memorable items. But from Galway, we had quite the float. It's hard for you to see these from where you are, I know. But we had quite the float, 2 horse and carriage setups, a cannon from the battlefield, and there we were representing Saratoga County and 200 years of history here in Saratoga County. It was most impressive and quite a memory, and especially special for Galway and who else but Phyllis to make sure that these things happen. And as Laurie said, yes, dear, we can do these things, can't we? So you can come and see those pictures if you want to. Come 1992, after learning all about the Constitution and learning to become historian like Phyllis was in Galway, I was in Charlton, that's when we learned that Galway, Charlton, and Milton were formed as new towns from what was Ballston because the population up here was so large that we needed to divide this population into different groups or whatever, am I saying this the right way, to be properly represented politically. There weren't as many people down in what is now New York City area. We were outbalancing them up here. So in 1892, those 3 towns were founded. So all of that year, we were very busy celebrating our town's bicentennials. We made banners, we were in parades, we did all sorts of activities, and it was a wonderful time. Lots of memories, especially for the students then. And then we just wanted to share some of those memories. And now I'm going back to be Laurie Lieber. Every Joseph Henry Day had a creative activity to engage students, and Phyllis was active in her role even after her retirement from teaching first grade and moving on to Galway, what's CSD? BOE. Anyway, the organizations you were representing. Phyllis, the committee person, and PTSA planned for the t-shirt design contests, a 200th anniversary postal stamp, Joseph Henry's birth, and visitors like Senator Tedisco, we welcome you here again, author Albert Moyer sharing his book, The Rise of Joseph Henry, The Rise of an American Scientist, and we have his book up here. And in that year, I found myself as the curator and archivist of what was known as GE Hall of History. And so I was filled with all of Joseph Henry and his electromagnetism and what was going on there. And I found myself working with Phyllis again for this 200th anniversary of Joseph Henry. And back here at the school, my children were graduated out pretty much of Galway by then. And so it was really fun to come back and work with people from all across the capital region, from the Smithsonian Institution itself, and Princeton and England, where Faraday came from, who was neck and neck with Joseph Henry in the electromagnetism story. And we had quite the year of activities centered around what was happening here in Galway too. At Union College, we had quite an exhibit on Joseph Henry, An Enduring Legacy. What we learned about Henry at that point was, as a young lad, as he was here in Galway and would sneak in the church and read every book he could find in the church library and sneak out again and learn all those things he learned, he became quite the student at Albany Academy, and he went on to be discovering things there such as the electromagnetism. And because of what he'd figured out and invented, Princeton University wanted him to come and teach there. Am I getting this right, Phyllis? But he didn't have a degree. He had not been to college, but here he was doing that kind of equivalent work. So Union College gave him an honorary degree so that he could then go and teach at Princeton. I also, at that point, was not only working over with General Electric and all of the inventions and things that have come from the research and development lab there and the over 100 years of history that GE had, I also have always been busy in Schenectady with the records of the First Reformed Church, which was the founding church of Schenectady. And in those records, I came to learn that Joseph Henry's family were members there. And that's where Joseph Henry got married. So all these things started coming together, which was so interesting of how we find ourselves in unexpected places as things come to our knowledge, and as historians we make these discoveries and learn how we're connected in ways we least expected. So from that bicentennial of Joseph Henry, we went on, and what Lori wanted to point out was all these wonderful t-shirts, and you probably have some in your homes too, for each year. This was 1988, 1989, so this is when we were busy doing the bicentennial of the Constitution, but still learning about Joseph Henry. And then this is a big one from an anniversary here from 2005. So you may recall those wonderful things that we all have around our house to remind us of Phyllis and the many things that we've done here in honor of Joseph Henry in Galway. Now, there was also an offer with this, after this big anniversary year and this new book about the life of Joseph Henry, the Smithsonian had printed these early papers of Joseph Henry. And they had spread these books around to many libraries and institutions, and they still had some extra copies. So they called Phyllis and said, "We have 1,500 more of volume 1 and 2 of the Joseph Henry papers. They're valued at about $50 each, but we're going to give them all to Galway free, as a gift to Joseph Henry Elementary School from the Smithsonian." So we had to, unfortunately though, we had to find a way to get down to Washington, D.C. and transport them here. So, and then they needed to be unloaded and stored here at the school. But as I said earlier, Phyllis replied, "We can do this, honey." So Phyllis was right. We did. Laurie's husband, Bob Van Franken, went on down to, he flew with a friend, Frank, on an who was an electrical engineer. They went to the rescue and flew to Washington, D.C., rented a U-Haul, loaded it up with all of those books, and when they went to the warehouse where they were getting the books to load on, there was Dr. Rothenberg, the head of the Smithsonian at that time, wearing Galway t-shirt in honor of Joseph Henry. They got quite a kick out of that, but Rothenberg loved this stuff. And when they came here for the bicentennial for Joseph Henry, they honored us so, and we had stamp cancellations, we had programs at Union College besides that exhibit. There was a special Researching New York conference at SUNY Albany where the folks came in from England to talk about Faraday and the accomplishments in electromagnetism and the other things. But there was Mr. Rothenberg with all those books. And he helped get them loaded into that U-Haul, and back they came to Galway with all of those books, and they have been handed out over the years to various students here at Galway. So, where do your notes go, Lori? Just a moment, please. There we are. I think that's a good place to stop because what else is on here I've already shared in my own way. So on behalf of Lori Liebert and myself, Laura Lee, congratulations, Phyllis. Thank you for bringing us and our community through this 50 years of history, and thank you for teaching me so much about how to be a historian, to follow in your shoes in so many ways in Charlton. And I continue that work now in Schenectady, and I will be soon training Schenectady's historians. We finally have historians in each of Schenectady's communities, and for the first time we will really be participating in New York State history activities as the city of Schenectady and the county of Schenectady. Thank you.
the Galway seniors.
Phyllis, Galway seniors would like to present you with these flowers for your years of dedication to our community, but more than that, being a friend to so many people in our community. Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to ask Wayne Brandow to come. Wayne is the president of the Galway Preservation Society.
Phyllis, on behalf of the Galway Preservation Society, we have a certificate that we'd like to give to you in recognition of these 50 years of service. It says, in recognition, awarded to Phyllis Keeler for 50 years of service to our community as Galway Town Historian, the Galway Preservation Society, awarded this 13th of November, 2019. And we also have a letter to accompany it. Dear Phyllis, those of us of the Galway Preservation Society did not want to miss out on recognizing your achievement as Galway's town historian for the past 50 years. You are our history champion. Over the past 50 years, whenever there was a historical event to be celebrated, you were there. You faithfully gathered and preserved history, both past and present, for future generations. With a ready smile and a warm greeting, you have led us, and as a longtime Galway school teacher, you continue to teach us by your example and your words the importance of being civic-minded. We are the fortunate ones here tonight who have gotten to know you and Earl, and we recognize how much you've done for your community, your church, your family, and your friends. We of the Galway Preservation Society have had the special privilege of numbering you among our membership since our inception. You were one of our founding members. No doubt that there are those here today who have had you as their elementary school teacher. Matter of fact, I saw somebody come up and said that you were their first grade teacher. I saw that. And no doubt there are those who worship with you in Barkersville Christian Church, in the Bible study you held in the Cook Museum and in your home. And no doubt there are those who work for you in the Galway Senior Citizens, the Galway Board of Education, the Galway Food Pantry, the Galway Education Foundation, the Galway Library Board, the Galway Republican Committee, the Board of the Sacandaga Bible Conference, and as a volunteer for Samaritan Purse's Operation Christmas Child. Frankly, Phyllis, we don't know how in the world you did this. I get all tuckered out just by reading the list. So congratulations, Phyllis, for 50 years. We love you. Those of us who know you can almost hear your voice in the words, "It is such a joy to know you," for we know it always comes from your heart.
At this time, I'd like to ask Craig Hayner to come up and present the proclamation from the Saratoga County Board of Supervisors. For those of you who might not know, Craig and Phyllis, Craig is Phyllis's nephew.
Yes, you got it right. Good evening, everyone. Hiya, Phyllis. I have to say that I'm just truly grateful. Supervisor Smith, thank you for inviting me to take part in this ceremony. It truly means a great deal to me. Little did I know that when I was a child coming up here with our family for Christmas to visit your family, Uncle Earl and yourself and Kathy and Earl, and it's amazing to me to think about being here tonight. I've always loved the town of Galway. It's just such a beautiful town, and you've continued to preserve it. And I think it's probably because of all of the recognition of the past to continue to make it that way. I have the honor of reading a proclamation from the Board of Supervisors tonight, and then I have a few personal remarks afterwards. So on behalf of the County Board of Supervisors, congratulating Phyllis Keeler on her 50th anniversary as Galway Town Historian. Whereas the Saratoga County Board of Supervisors wishes to recognize the significant accomplishments of Saratoga County residents, and whereas Phyllis Keeler moved from Johnstown to the town of Galway in 1957 after graduating from the State University of New York at Oneonta with her bachelor's degree in education. Phyllis was a teacher in the Joseph Henry Elementary School for 33 years, serving in various capacities, including advisor to the Joseph Henry Student Council and treasurer of the Galway PTSA. Phyllis was awarded Teacher of the Year in 1981. And whereas Phyllis Keeler was the founder of Joseph Henry Day in Galway, honoring Joseph Henry, who grew up in Galway around 1800, and later became the first secretary of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington. Joseph Henry is credited for aiding and discovering several important principles of electricity, including self-induction and improvements in electromagnetics. And whereas Phyllis Keeler has served as president of the Galway's Teachers Association, the Galway Central School Board of Education, Galway Preservation Society, Galway Education Foundation, Galway Pantry, and Galway Senior Citizens Organization as the owner-director of the Cook Museum in Galway. Whereas, I'm getting tired just trying to read this. Amazing. Whereas Phyllis Keeler was a 4-H leader for 25 years, and in 1988 was honored with a State of New York legislative resolution from Senator Hugh Farley and M.A. Harris, commending her upon the occasion of her designation for the special honor by the State of New York 4-H Foundation and Cornell University. But we're not done yet. Whereas in 1966, Phyllis served as the executive director of the Billy Graham Crusade with associate evangelist Ralph Bell in Fonda. Phyllis has been a coordinator for Operation Christmas Child for many years. Phyllis has been the president of Saginaw Bible Conference and continues to serve as a board member. Phyllis is also an active member of the Gideon's International Saratoga Camp, where she served as an auxiliary chaplain. Phyllis continues to serve as president of the Galway Foster Hill Cemetery Association. And just to remark a little bit just on the Gideons, which is a tremendous organization, it would not be, you would be hard pressed not to see Phyllis or Earl be at the Saratoga County Fair each year, every day, all day long, handing out Gideon Bibles. Whereas Phyllis Keeler has also been active in her community as chairman of the Galway Republican Committee, president of the Upper Hudson Historical Foundation, and as a member of Galway Library Board. And whereas one of Phyllis Keeler's greatest joys has been serving as a town of Galway historian since November of 1969, making this month as the occasion of her 50th anniversary as town historian. And whereas it is fitting that this Board of Supervisors recognize the hard work and dedication of Phyllis Keeler as a public servant, leader, and dedicated educator, now and therefore be it resolved and proclaimed that Saratoga County Board of Supervisors hereby commends and congratulates Phyllis Keeler upon her 50th anniversary as a town of Galway historian and expresses its appreciation and that of its residents of Saratoga County for the lifelong service she has rendered to her community. This is signed on by Chairman Kevin Towson, Chairman of the Board of Saratoga County Board of Supervisors, and our Supervisor Mike Smith.
Thank you.
And before I present, I would just like to give a few personal remarks. I promise I'll be short, but hopefully meaningful. If you know my Aunt Phyllis, then you know that her faith, her family, her country, and her community are deeply interwoven in who she is, and that she has always strived to do the very best with a standard of excellence, with determination, commitment, and humility in everything she has done throughout her career. To know Phyllis, you need to know the source of her strength and trust, and that is her deep abiding faith in God. I asked my cousin Kathy, Phyllis's daughter, to give me a Bible verse that would best describe her mom, and she suggested Philippians 1:27. Only be sure to lead your lives in a manner that will be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I do come and see you or remain absent, I will hear about you, that you are standing firm in one spirit and one purpose. Whether as president of the Second Bible Conference or president of the Board of Education, whether as a coordinator of Operation Christmas Child or tutoring struggling children to read, as a daughter, as a wife, as a mother, sister, sister-in-law, aunt, community leader, teacher, mentor, or friend, her goal and desire has always been to glorify God and love others as a true follower of Jesus Christ. Aunt Phyllis, I'm truly grateful for you and Uncle Earl's deep commitment to faith, and want you to know that our entire family truly appreciates you and loves you for always being a shining example of God's love and grace. Thank you.
All right. At this time, I'd like to ask Mary Beth Walsh, Assemblywoman Mary Beth Walsh, to come up and try to beat that.
Yeah, whoever put the program together really put me in the wrong spot. So. But I will be short, so you've got that going for you. I'm really happy to be here tonight, and I just think it's lovely that we're doing this. So often we don't say thank you and recognize people like we should. You know, we're busy, right? But Galway does so many things right. And when Mike told me that he had this idea to put this together, I was really happy to say yes right away, and I'm glad to be here. I just think that, I was just listening to all of the things that you've done, and I'm not going to read that whole list. I'm not going to read this assembly citation. But it just struck me that my dad always used to say that there are people that talk and there are people that do. And you are a doer. And I just was visualizing you as you're just a beautiful silver thread that's just woven its way through this entire community. And if you think of our community as a quilt, that's what you've done. You've brought together all the people and the stories and the history, and you've put it all together for us. And that's something that will always be here in Galway, long after we're all gone. And I just love the fact that you took that spirit of curiosity and the desire to teach, and you brought all that positive energy together, and you gave that as a beautiful gift to your community for all these years. So I'm just very, very happy to know you. And I wanted to offer you this assembly citation. It goes through many of the achievements that we've already talked about, but thank you. Thank you for what you've done for all of us, and I think that that's why we're all here tonight. So, thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce Senator Jim Tedisco.
Thank you, Supervisor. Phyllis, this is your night. And I have to say, on your night, you look absolutely beautiful. I don't know what happened happened way back when you were a senior, but if this was your senior night, I'd ask you to the ball. You know, we've interacted over the years. 38 years I've been in the legislature, and you've been involved in my life in one way or another throughout those 38 years. My wife says you're partially responsible for me not eating many dinners at home because you helped get me elected all those years, and I thank you for that. We have something else in common. I had a real job before I became a public servant in the way of being an elected official. I was an educator for 10 years, absolutely. And tonight, it's a tremendous source of honor and pride for me to be able to be here to honor you for 50 years of service to this wonderful town. You know, where myself and Mary Beth come from, the only thing that seems to last 50 years are the New York State budget negotiations. Okay? And they have never come out as beautiful and grand as you, I can tell you that. But through your work on these wonderful books, Joseph Henry, you create a great source of pride in your community as an outstanding citizen to keep his story and his life alive, and the wonderful impact you had on the young people as an educator. And, you know, it's been said that if we don't learn from history, some people say we're doomed, we're destined to in some way repeat that history, and it seems to be a bad thing. Well, I think everybody in this room has learned from you, but we wish we could repeat history for the last 50 years and have 50 years of your service to this community, the unbelievable service you had. And in closing, as I give you this New York State proclamation, and it says, honoring Phyllis Keeler upon the occasion of her 50 years of service to the town of Galway as town historian, I got to ask you a question, Phyllis. 50 years of service. How did you ever get the job at 10 years of age? God bless you, Phyllis, and thank you so much for your service.
Okay, I'd like to thank everyone for coming again. I'd like to thank all the presenters tonight. Unfortunately, Lori wasn't able to be here, but Laura, you stepped in and filled the void very well, and thank you so much.
Honor.
I want to thank Lizzie Fulner and the seniors, Pastor Brandow, Mary Beth, Craig, Senator Tedesco. I also want to thank Kathy for all the information and help you've given me along the way on this. I could have never done it without all the background and help that you've given me. Mr. Keeler, for coming up here, for both you guys making the trip up to be here for your mom. It's a, you know, an awesome thing. I want to thank Britta Donovan and Mike Miller from Galway Schools for allowing us to hold the ceremony here. We initially thought that we'd hold this in Town Hall, and as you can see, I don't think we'd have gotten everybody in the door. And lastly, and the most important part of this, is I want to thank you, Phyllis, for everything you've done for the Galway community as a whole. You've served this community with the utmost diligence, professionalism, character, and you've been a lifelong educator, whether it was first graders at Joseph Henry Elementary, or it was people looking for information about Galway, or it was all of us in the room tonight that you've affected along the way. Congratulations on 50 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for coming. You all mean so much to me. I look out here tonight and I look in the faces of some of my first graders many years ago. And I'm so thankful for all of you, the friends, the co-workers. It's a privilege to live in Galway. I've always been so proud. And I'm always happy when you call me and say, I'm looking for some information on Galway. Can you help me? And away we go down to the office, and almost always we find just what we needed. I've been happy to help students in school, and then they have come back in their adult life and helped me work in my office. I thank you all for coming. You were all special to me. I'm so thankful that God has blessed me and given me the strength at almost 85 to still serve you. And I am so proud to say, I live in Galway, New York. God bless you. I am so thankful that you came. Anyone have anything to say at this point? I would be happy for you to come and share something if you want to.
Well, and for everyone, we have refreshments out in the lobby, and we can, everybody can chat and visit and enjoy some pastries and coffee and tea from the Cock and Bull.
Thank you.
If anyone wants to take a look at any of the memorabilia and history, please feel free. Oh, wait a minute, we got one more thing. You're up, buddy. Yep.
Son, oh wow, it is. It's the alma mater. Galway High's our alma mater, a jolly place to be, whether working or a playing, none are happier than we. And if you will only ask us, we'll sing a merry tune that will keep the hills a-ringing from September until June. When the golden sun is setting, hear our voices ringing clear, thanking you for all the memories we'll hold forever dear. And our faces will be smiling, though we've won or lost the game.